President Bush, in March of 2003, he delivered an ultimatum to Saddam Hussein. Roll it.
Saddam Hussein and his sons must leave Iraq within 48 hours. Their refusal to do so will result in military conflict, commenced at a time of our choosing. Terrorists and terrorist states do not reveal these threats with fair notice in formal declarations. And responding to such enemies only after they have struck first is not self-defense, it is suicide. The security of the world requires disarming Saddam Hussein now.
2 days later, the president said this. Roll it.
My fellow citizens, at this hour, American and coalition forces are in the early stages of military operations to disarm Iraq, to free its people, and to defend the world from grave danger.
Did the president lie us into war?
Absolutely not. We can go back before President Bush, and people should be reminded that Bill Clinton signed the Iraq Liberation Act of 1998 into law that supported regime change in Iraq. In 2002, both houses of Congress voted overwhelmingly to pass a resolution authorizing the removal of Saddam Hussein by force, at which time people like Joe Biden, Hillary Clinton, John Kerry, and Harry Reid offered, as Victor David Hansen says, moving arguments on the Senate floor as to why we should depose Saddam Hussein in a post-9/11 climate.
But Arnold, they went to evidence, and one of the key pieces of evidence was the infamous 16 words in the State of the Union address regarding the uranium yellow cake from Niger. And here are those 16 words. Roll it.
The British government has learned that Saddam Hussein recently sought significant quantities of uranium from Africa.
Let's hit that specifically, because you concentrate on that in your latest articles regarding the WMD in Iraq, now posted on the Facebook page. 16 words, were they true?
No, they were not true, but every intelligence agency in the world thought the same thing. And the bottom line is that this was a campaign led by Joe Wilson, who was thoroughly discredited a year later by a select Senate committee report, which further noted that Bush had been fully justified in including the infamous 16 words regarding that intelligence in his speech. And as I say in my piece, the left has never bothered to explain why yellow cake procured before 1991 was any less dangerous in terms of its WMD potential, given Saddam Hussein's regular defiance of international law, which was also enunciated by Bush as one of the primary reasons for deposing him.
So the allegations regarding the yellow cake, and specifically, the words prove not to be true, but lying is to knowingly mislead, to know they're not true and say them anyway. And what you were saying, part of this, and Joe Wilson, obviously Valerie Plame, husband, Scooter Libby, and the original leaker, Richard Armitage, that would be Colin Powell's undersecretary. This, if we trace it, you are saying that when they accused President Bush of lying, he didn't lie because what he had told him that it was true, and Joe Wilson, in fact, was misleading.
Oh, absolutely, without question.
So now we go to more of the evidence, and we concentrate on Senator John Kerry. Here's what he had to say in the run-up to the Iraq War. Roll it.
I have said publicly for years that weapons of mass destruction in the hands of Saddam Hussein pose a real and grave threat to our security. Iraq has invested more heavily in its biological weapons programs over the last 4 years. R&D, production, and weaponization are active. Most elements of the program are larger and more advanced than they were before the Gulf War. In addition, we know they are developing unmanned aerial vehicles capable of delivering chemical and biological warfare agents.
Now, a little later on in the program, we're going to be addressing the politics of this, but there is an intersection here. Here is Senator John Kerry stating what the president has stated regarding chemical weapons, evidence being the same. So was John Kerry telling the truth there, Arnold?
Well, John Kerry has always been for something before he was against it. So truth is a very slippery word when we're talking about John Kerry, or for that matter, a number of progressives who basically deal in situational ethics is what I like to call them, because like you've gotten right there, John Kerry very forcefully making the case for removing Saddam Hussein, and then in June, following June 203 and forward, making the case that Bush lied us into war and the whole 9 yards there. So how much credibility does he have? Well,
That's the real question here is credibility. And so many people say we don't want to go back and rehash the past. But if the past is people are coming away from it with Bush lied, people died, no chemical weapons, then to make a judgment on ISIS's capabilities and the dangers currently in Iraq, well, it does speak to being responsible to clear up some of these things. And you did that in your latest article, as mentioned. But tell us what we have learned and what ISIS seemingly could have access to today in Iraq.
Well, ISIS more than likely has access to the stockpiles of what they think is sarin, mustard gas, and nerve agent VX manufactured to prosecute the war against Iran. And these are the chemical weapons that are found at Al-Mutana, which ISIS took over approximately a week ago, and the administration is comforting itself with the notion that all of this potential weaponry is probably not usable at this point. But note, every time they talk about it, they say maybe. They don't know for sure. And it's funny because following that piece, I got a letter from somebody who, according to his letter, worked as a munitions expert in Iraq, and said that it's absolutely absurd that they would say this stuff is that it's definitely inert or that it can't be used. And then people forget, because it was one of those stories that sort of slipped under the radar at the time, but 500 tons of yellow cake was removed from Iraq and sent to Canada. I believe the year was 2007, and they shipped it out of the country precisely because they thought there was a chance that terrorist elements could get a hold of it, and that would pose a real danger.
How would these terrorist elements, but how would ISIS use these types of weapons? Because you allude to it in your piece about their use of a specific type of attack.
Well, it's hard to say, but right now, I believe this week they also got a hold of some helicopters. Mm-hmm. So that it's not impossible to think that they could do what is occurring in Syria, or has occurred in Syria over the last 6 months, which is spraying them down from the air and killing hundreds, if not thousands, of people.
Wrapping up, Arnold Ahlert, final summation here regarding the lies. Bush lied, people died. Bipartisan Senate Intel Committee reviewed it, said, no, that didn't happen. Yellow cake, they knew at the time what the information they had at the time, they believed it to be true. They did not knowingly mislead on that issue. And as you detail, Joe Wilson turned out to be the person who was not telling the truth. Grade the journalist, the fourth estate, if you will, regarding the coverage of these issues.
Well, what we've talked about a million times, the press has an agenda, and anything that doesn't accrue to their interest is going to be either misreported or not reported at all. And that's the case with much of what went on in Iraq.
We appreciate your perspective, and we appreciate your work, because you provide us with the facts, the truth. Arnold Ahlert, thank you. And now we will be joined on the flip side by our good friend, Lieutenant Colonel Gordon Kakulu, who was over in Iraq in 2008. He was working with those who were defending the new government and were part of the surge. We're going to get his insights militarily and strategically, as he has served in war, specifically the Vietnam War, as a Green Beret. And he's written extensively on 3 wars, including the war fronts in Afghanistan and Iraq with the war on Islamofascism, as well as the legal aspects of the war with Inside Gitmo. And his first book, Separated at Birth, How North Korea Became the Evil Twin. Can we win Iraq as a war front? And what does that mean if we're speaking militarily? If not, should we be sending troops in harm's way? Crane Durham's Nothing But Truth, Iraq Special, AFR Talk.